Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are so honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show and let them know they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Good Pods, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a wonderful show for you today. José Pablo Iriarte will be here to celebrate Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Department. Suma Subramaniam is going to be here to celebrate My Name is as Long as a River. We will also be joined by debut children's book author Heather Marish, celebrating the adventures of pickle juice and patty cakes. An ancient prophecy, a giant quest, a plethora of hominins. 13-year-old Toby Baxter is in a foul mood, stuck in the middle seat on an 8-hour flight with mice and men as his only company. But everything changes when he's summoned back to River Home. Now he's in the middle of a giant uprising linked to his former arch-nemesis, Clygon. Toby must repair the sword, the lifeblood of River Home. Battling rebel giants, trolls, and a primeval snake, Toby's vacation becomes an epic adventure. Will his foul mood sidetrack him, or will he embrace his call to be a hero? Filled with humor, tongue-in-cheek dialogue, and heroic life lessons, Aloha, River Home, The Good Prophecy is a magical journey for middle schoolers and fantasy lovers alike. Dive into the latest quest in the adventures of Toby Baxter, Book 3, written by Tim Wright. It's now available. Grab your copy and embark on a mesmerizing adventure today. Visit your favorite bookstore or order online. Don't miss out on Toby Baxter's next thrilling adventure.
Hi friends, I'm Rilla B. And I don't know about you, but I love riddles, books, and moving around. If you love those things too, then you should definitely check out Reading with Rilla B, where we have amazing authors come and share their stories with us. And then, if you like to actually see the book yourself, you can go to YouTube and watch the read-alouds too. So definitely check out Reading with Rilla B anywhere that you stream your podcast, or Rilla B Books on YouTube. See you there. Toodles!
Join us right now from the beautiful state of Florida. Our guest is here today to celebrate his brand new middle grade novel. It's called Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Departed. Please welcome to the show, José Pablo Iriarte. Hey, Jose, how are you?
Great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Super happy to have you on. I love the title of this book, Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Departed. What makes them nearly departed?
Well, in this case, it's the ghost of Benny's grandfather that when Benny and his family move into the mansion that they inherit from him in Miami, Benny discovers that his ghost is still hanging around, so he's not quite departed yet.
You know, we've talked a lot here in the podcast about kids in the middle grade age that they love spooky stories. Why do you think that is?
I think, when you read a spooky middle grade story, you can safely experience a little bit of fear, but you know that it's not going to be too over the top. It's not going to leave scars, Mm-hmm. So you get to just kind of play with it a little bit and try it on and see how you feel.
Now, what was the inspiration for this book? Do you have a haunted house down in Florida?
I don't, but I did grow up in Miami, and I love contemporary fantasy. That's my most common thing to write, and that's what I love to read and what I love to watch in media. I just love the idea that there's more around us than we perceive if we only just knew how to look for it. And so it's a little bit of that and a little bit of wanting to show a different side of Miami than you commonly see. Because whenever I see Miami in television, it's always South Beach. It's always, the Art Deco buildings and, the popular hot spots and the nightlife and all that. And all that's there and all that's legitimate. But I grew up in Miami and that wasn't my Miami, I grew up in way down South Miami. And there was a lot more nature than just the beach and palm trees. There was tree canopy winding roads and banyan trees and mangroves. And I just wanted to set a story in a Miami that felt like where I grew up.
Yeah. I was just talking with a friend of mine from high school that I hadn't seen in years, and we were talking about the different places we've traveled to, and I was telling him that I can do the touristy stuff for like a day. My beautiful wife wants to do it. We just came back from the Bologna, Italy, and we saw all the churches. But I also made sure that I went to the local supermarket. And because I love going and seeing how people in different areas actually live.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When I've traveled someplace, I love to spend more than just a day or two, so that we get a chance to do that. We have a vacation club where we get to spend a week here or there, and we'll be in an apartment with a kitchen. So we will go grocery shopping and cook our meals and all that, and then and then this isn't the opposite of touristy. This is kind of touristy, but I like to do museums of local history. And just kind of get a feel for what's unique about this place where I happen to be.
Yeah. It's so, I just love it, because one of the things I've discovered, no matter where I am, no matter how different the situation looks, the people are typically the same. It's like, oh yeah, this person doesn't look like me. They don't speak the same language. They eat different food, but he or she is my sibling. We're part of the same human family.
Yeah, get most people one-on-one, and then you can see the kindness, and you can build relationships.
Yeah. What is it about this age group, this middle grade age group, that you enjoy writing for so much?
I think so much is new and exciting, but younger kids, everything's new also, but younger kids are sheltered a lot more. This is an age where people start to step away from that sheltering and start to experience the world and start to figure out who they are. But they're not yet wrestling with the angst of young adult novels. They're just, the world is exciting, and they're exploring it a little bit, and that's fun.
Yeah, and I think it's also the time where they're kind of just starting to feel like they have to break away and become more independent.
Yeah. We're not really getting into the big kind of identity and who am I, but the seeds are there.
Yeah. I'm so happy that, and this is going off on an off-roading topic, but I'm so happy we didn't have the technology that kids have today when I was in that middle school age, because I know I would have posted some stuff that would have come back to haunt me very badly.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even in my young adulthood, I'm just grateful that some of the stupid things that I thought, aren't still following me around. For sure.
Did you always plan and want to be an author?
Yeah. I have been writing my stories since I can remember, certainly as far back as fifth grade, and I'm sure longer ago than that, but I can certainly remember. And it seemed like I was always starting novels. Started a novel in fifth grade and sixth grade and seventh grade, ninth grade, college, but never finishing them. That was a trick that took many years to figure out how to do. I didn't finish a novel for the first time until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
And I'm not in my 30s now, so it took a while then to, okay, now I can finish a novel. Can I write a novel that anybody wants to buy?
Tell me, what kind of books did you like to read when you were this age?
When I was in middle school, I don't know if I'd quite discovered science fiction yet. I think that's right around the time when I discovered science fiction. And I got into, these categories didn't exist. And my parents would buy me anything that I wanted to read. As long as I was reading, they were happy with it. So I got into kind of the classic golden age science fiction with Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov. And when I think about some of those Heinlein novels that I read especially, it's like, whoa, this is not something that a seventh grader should be reading. But,
You came out of it okay.
Yeah, I came out of it okay.
Yeah. I've had a number of fantasy and science fiction authors on the show, and I'm always amazed at how they keep track of the universe that they're creating. And, there's all these different physics and science that are going on, and I'm like, I can barely keep track of it as a reader, and you're creating this, and I'm wondering if you run into any of that as you're talking about this ghost story.
A little bit, but that's why I really prefer contemporary setting fantasy stories, because I don't have to build the whole world. But I do still have to figure out the rules, and I do still, because for most of the story, Benny's grandfather can't seem to leave the house. And then suddenly I need him out of the house. So we've got to come up with, the rationale for now you can, and I do have to kind of track, all right, when did this happen and what am I saying? And sometimes I am a plotter. I try very hard to decide in advance where the story's going to go. But even so, you can't help it. The story's going to surprise you, or you're just not going to have thought of something. And then, well, okay, this is where I laid out what the rules were, but the rules aren't working. So now I've got to come up with an acceptable reason why the rules are going to change here.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they hear an author say, I was really surprised where the story took me. I think a lot of people go, no, you're writing the story. Of course you're in control. But can you describe what's that like when you kind of plot things out and you're going down that road, but then all of a sudden the story just takes you in a direction that you weren't expecting?
I think when the story surprises me, and I am a big time pre-plotter, so I don't write by the seat of my pants, but when the story really does surprise me, a lot of times it's dialogue that makes it happen, because it's like I'm method acting, and I'm trying to get into a character's head, and I'm trying to think about, okay, what makes this human being different from that human being and make them sound different? And so I'm going to make them talk like themselves. And sometimes the dialogue is not pre-planned. And sometimes the words just come out of their mouth, and they'll ask a pointed question, or they'll make an observation. And I'm like, oh no, you have a point. I hadn't thought about that. And then, it's all kind of stimulus and response. So then that might affect the protagonist and things like that. So I have a different story from this. I have a novelette from 2018 where a big current running through it is a romantic current that was never intended by me to be in that story. But one of the characters just asked another one, hey, this girl, is that your girlfriend? And I'm like, what? Maybe.
How did Benny's grandfather first appear to the family, or to Benny?
So Benny and his family move in, and, they were not poor by any means, but this mansion is a whole new level for them. But it's also full of junk, because Benny's grandfather was really self-absorbed. That's why they didn't know him that well in the first place, because he was, hotshot music star, really high on himself. And so his house is just filled with memorabilia, but not so much memorabilia about him trying to remember the happy things he's experienced, more about him trying to remind himself how terrific and amazing and talented he is. So they've got to clean out this house, and they're wading through all this junk, and all the kids claim their room, like, this is going to be my bedroom. And Benny ends up with a room that's full of all these old trophies and plaques and whatnot. And just as he picks one up, his grandfather shows up and says, I got that from so-and-so. And his grandfather has already figured out the rules, and the rules are nobody can see him. So when it turns out that Benny can see him, that is a big shock to both of them.
Wow. I love this. I think this would be a phenomenal book. In a minute, I'm going to ask you what kind of conversation you think families can have as they're hopefully co-reading Benny Ramirez in The Nearly Departed. But I want to share with you, I don't think I've shared this on the podcast, my own kind of ghosty story with a grandfather. We've hosted international kids here in our home, and one of the students who just absolutely became part of our family was from China. And so she was here in high school. She went to Syracuse for undergrad, came back to Boston for her graduate degree. Didn't live with us, but was still over the house a lot to visit. And for my 60th birthday, she called me up and she said, what are we doing for your birthday? And I said, we're not doing anything. I'm old. Don't worry about it. And she said, no, we're having a party. So we had a party. And she gave me this beautiful painting her grandfather made, one of those Asian scroll paintings. And it was just beautiful. And I put it right here in my studio, right over there. And the studio also has my gym. And Sarah had to go back home because her grandfather was very sick. And we were supposed to get together for dinner. And she called, I have to go home. My grandfather's sick, and I don't want to miss him. I want to be able to say goodbye to him. And she went home. And a couple of days later, I was on my bike, and there was nothing going on, no wind, no nothing, and the painting that her grandfather made just fell off the wall.
Oh.
And so I picked it up and put it back up, but I got a call later that day from her fiancé saying that, Sarah's grandfather passed away. And I said, when? Oh, today. And what time? And I did the calculations, and when he passed was when this painting fell off the wall.
Yeah. I love the idea, and I'm not a big, believer in anything, but I love the idea that there's just got to be more to the world. I want there to be more to the world. Yeah. So that's what just makes that such a fertile ground to play in.
Yeah. It was such a wonderful experience, and of course when they heard about it in China, they're like, please, can we have the painting back? And it's like, of course. How am I going to say no? Of course we can. That's where it belongs. Tell me, what kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're co-reading Benny Ramirez and The Nearly Departed together?
Well, a couple of things spring to mind. First of all, this kind of about the relationship between the characters and the way that they are not all necessarily 100% on the same page at the same time. But one thing that I hope comes through really strong in this is how everybody in Benny's family, they love each other. This is a functional family. This is a family where everybody supports each other. Even the siblings, sometimes they might have friction, but there isn't really a strong element of sibling rivalry. And that's something I really wanted to be there. That's there by design, because we see so much media that's designed for kids and for kids of this age, where the parents are either terrible people or they're buffoons or they're absent, and the kids are at each other's throats all the time. And Benny has got to ultimately fight his battles alone, and that's why that's there, right? Because we want the protagonist to have to protag and have to save the day. And so that's an easy way sometimes to make them be alone. But it was really important to me to buck that trend a little bit. So I think families can talk about how the siblings and all that are pulling together to the best of their ability, even though they all have their own problems to deal with. They're all adjusting to a new school. Benny's brother is a super talented actress, and Benny's Benny's younger brother is a very talented actor, and his older sister is a very talented dancer, and they expected to come into this performing arts school in Miami and fit right in, and they're discovering that they've got challenges. Benny was expected to have challenges because he's not an actor. He's not an artist. He doesn't see himself as one anyway. So they've all got their own challenges, and they've got to kind of wrestle with those. but they still want the best for each other. And that's something that, that definitely comes out to me. Another thing, a big part of this story is about, like imposter syndrome, that idea of feeling like perhaps you don't belong. And Benny's got to deal with that because his parents are on the faculty of this performing arts school. So that's why he's there. Mm-hmm. Everybody else auditioned. Everybody else is a talented artist. He's just a kid, you know? So he's got a lot of feeling like he doesn't belong. And that's where his grandfather comes in, because his grandfather was a superstar musician. So his grandfather's like, I've got the answer. I will make you a superstar musician. And he's wrong. And his advice is terrible advice, because all of his advice amounts to stop being yourself. Be me instead. Mm-hmm. And, you know, being who Ignacio was great for Ignacio, maybe, arguably. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely not great for Benny. And, you know, Benny has to learn not to make the same mistakes that Ignacio made. And then Ignacio himself gets to experience a character arc, which is something else that's kind of unusual. I think we see the kids always have their coming of age moment, mm-hmm. but his grandfather kind of has a coming of age moment. He has it after he's deceased. So,
well, you know, better late than never, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we celebrate the fact that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, and you're absolutely right. It's really good that kids who come from stable, loving, supportive families get to see themselves portrayed positively in the pages of Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Departed. Because you don't see that, especially dads. I can't remember the last functional, not a dope dad that I've seen on TV and any.
And Dad here isn't perfect. He misreads. Like he doesn't realize how his kids are struggling, but you can tell that he's not a moron, and you can tell that he wants the best for his family. And as soon as he puts it together, then he's on it, you know? Yeah. And honestly though, even kids, from really struggling families, I think it's good to see that it's possible, right. You know, that when you start your own family someday, you can vow to make it a functional family.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, what's next for you, Jose? Do you have another project in the works?
I am currently working on the sequel, actually. It's not really a sequel. It's kind of a partner book. It's set in Miami. It's contemporaneous to Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Departed, and it's got some crossover characters. But the protagonist is not Benny and is not any of the characters that you meet in this book. And I am in a bad place deadline-wise. I've got to finish that yesterday or last week. So that is all that is my reality right now.
Well, I'm glad your publisher allowed you to come out and play with us tonight for a little bit, and we'll let you get back to that. Where can we go to find out more about Benny Ramirez and the Nearly Departed and find out more about you?
Well, I have a website, but I'm really terrible at updating it. It's JoséPabloIriarte.com. You won't find a lot there, but you will find a link to the book. But otherwise, it's at every retailer. Just search for it at every retailer. It's on Goodreads. And I do have a Facebook author page. I think it's facebook.com/José Pablo Iriarte author. I had to throw the word author there because somehow somebody had already snagged that page. And I'm like, how many José Pablo Iriartes can there possibly be that somebody's already snagged this page?
Well, we're really happy that we had a chance to speak to this José Pablo Iriarte, and we hope everybody checks out Benny Ramirez in the Nearly Departed. Jose, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by my sister wants an elephant. by Lynn Podrat. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. We love this heartwarming and delightful children's story that showcases the determination and teamwork of Randy and Jerica as they strive to convince their mother to consider their unusual pet request. While they may not get to have the animals directly in their backyard, it is intriguing to hear that their mom finds a way to grant them access to llamas and an elephant. The book's theme of not giving up on dreams, even if they seem wild, is inspiring and entertaining. You and your kids will love it. My Sister Wants an Elephant by Lynn Podrat. Are you looking for the perfect family read for the Summer Olympics? They're just around the corner. In Takedown by Laura Chauvin, Lev is determined to compete at the State Wrestling Championship. But then he's paired with a new partner, a girl. Lev and Michaela push each other to excel, but when they meet on the mat, only one can win. Takedown is a multiple award-winning and state list-nominated middle grade novel about families, friendships, and hard work. Get your copy today at bookshop.org or check out the free educator's guide at laurachauvin.com. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Seattle. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new picture book. It's called My Name is As Long as a River. Please welcome to the show, Suma Subramaniam. Suma, how are you?
I'm good, Jed. How are you doing? And thank you for having me in the podcast.
I'm doing wonderful. I'm delighted to have you on the show. What a curious title. My Name is As Long as a River. Tell us about this title and what inspired you, please.
Yeah, so back in 2020, my agent, Miranda Paul, editor Elizabeth Lee, and I brainstormed a news story. And obviously, I was thinking about a news story at that point, and we thought, why don't we write something about names? And I myself have a long name, so the inspiration came from having a long name myself, and the many times it was misspelled and mispronounced. So I wrote this story drawing from my own personal history and just the email exchange that I had with my agent and editor led me down to this path of research, and it led me into a long and winding path of discovering why names are important, and that's why I wrote this book. I also feel like we put a lot of effort into naming our children, and it's the same with cultures everywhere. In India, where I grew up, we celebrate something called Namakaranam, which is a naming ceremony, and it's one of the most important rituals in the life of a person. And families take a lot of effort in choosing a name. Sometimes they have more than one name. They have two names and three names and stuff like that. So I also have have two names. So Jaya Lakshmi is my other name, and and I'm named after both of my grandmothers who were called Jaya Lakshmi, and it means the goddess of victory. So if you look at My Name is Long as a River, the name of the protagonist is Kaveri Tanjavur Jayalakshmi Ganesan. And every one of those names have been drawn from my own family. So Kaveri would have been the name of my own miracle child if I'd had one. And it's also the name of my husband's great grandmother. And it's also the name of the river that connects our family's ancestral origins. Tanjavur is a city in South India where my elders lived for many years, and that's where all of my ancestors come from. And Jaya Lakshmi is my other name that I primarily use for special ceremonies. It's not on my legal papers. And the last name, Ganesan, is my grandfather's name, and it's also the name of the elephant-headed god. I think families play a huge part in naming a child when it comes to Indian culture, for sure, because names are sometimes they're named by parents, but sometimes, we're named by the elders in the family. And for example, I got my name from my own grandmother. She decided that she will name me Suma because that's what she wanted. So I think names, as such, there are no rules, but everyone gets them from everywhere. And sometimes names are even made up, with several people's names in the family.
Wow. So is the story that we're going to experience in My Name is As Long as a River, who are the different characters and what kind of adventure will we be going on?
So this is an adventure where, Kaveri, who is the protagonist of this story, sets out on this journey with her grandmother along the river that she's named after. And they go on to celebrate the Kaveri Pushkaram, which is a festival, a Hindu festival that celebrates and honors the river that she's named after. And it usually occurs in India once in 12 years. And they meet all their relatives who live along the delta of the Kaveri. And her grandmother is a handloom weaver, so she weaves saris, and so they gift saris to all of these family members that they have, and then they all gather and they eat foods that are grown along the delta, that are made from the rice and grains that are grown along the delta of the Kaveri, and then they celebrate the festival. And then she goes all the way. And if you look at the Kaveri River itself, it is a river that spans about 475 miles across 3 states and a union territory in India. So she travels all the way from the west to the east, where the river becomes one with the ocean. And that's the point where she realizes that her name belongs to her and she belongs to it. And it has more power than she had imagined.
Wow. It's so neat that kids and families will be able to take a peek into the fascinating culture and cultures of India, because that is a nation I haven't had the opportunity to visit yet, but I have a number of connections in India, and it is such a fascinating land.
Yeah, thank you. I do feel like there's a lot of history there to unpack in India. It's and also in terms of literature and in terms of the language and diversity in India, it's varied. Even in this particular book, I have, if you look at the author's note, I have poems and sayings that celebrate the river Kaveri. And it's in 4 different languages. And even if they are Indian languages, something for you to know is every language is different from the other because it has its own script, it has its own grammatical usage, it has its own literature and history.
I'm fascinated. One of the things I've learned through doing reading with your kids is that India, I think the number, if I remember right, has 28 official languages and then a myriad of other dialects and languages.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think it's more than 28 though.
Possibly. It's it's funny because we live here where English is the dominant language, but there. And I'm glad now that people are more open, and people who don't speak English as a first language, there's more of an effort to have things translated for them, especially when it comes to voting and important information that they need for their health and for their kids. But it seems that there are still some people here in the States that are resistant to languages, and it's almost as if they are hearing another language makes them feel uncomfortable.
True, yes. And I think with globalization, the number of languages that we cannot speak and we cannot understand is going to increase. And it's the same with names too, because names are a significant part of our culture. And not just Indian culture, but cultures world over. And people put, like we said, a lot of effort into naming their children, and names are also part, they define who these children are and where they come from and who they are. And if we look at schools in general, there is a lot of diversity right now in schools. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we all share in common and the children share in common is a name.
Yeah.
And when it is mispronounced or when it's changed, and it's usually done, without consciousness, but then it can lead to a child feeling invisible. It can lead to them feeling ignored and unseen and overlooked, and they're less likely to make friends in school. So something to understand and unpack here is that the number of cultures and the number of languages and experiences that people have in the world are all varied, and we are going to come across all of them with globalization. Mm-hmm. And we are going to make mistakes, and we're not perfect, but it is important to make that effort to at least say a name correctly. So if we come across, and also it is not just important to say a name correctly, but also empower people with the right tools so we can help them say our names correctly. Mm-hmm. So for example, because everyone wants to respect each other, but if we empower each other with the right tools, we can do that. We can make it happen. Mm-hmm. And this book is about bringing everything together. It's not only about cultural pride, but it's about sharing that pride and respecting the names and identities of all people.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think you're absolutely correct. And one of the things I did it with you, I always try to pronounce somebody's name, a guest coming on this show, but I always start by saying, I might get this wrong, so excuse me if I do. Because I do think it's important. I think it's important to try, but I also think it's important to, as you said, allow the person to feel seen and admit, hey, I might do this wrong. It's, I might need your help. I think it goes a long way. I hope it goes a long way to show somebody that you are respectful of them. And how can we kind of teach that to our kids to kind of make that effort? Because I think there are so many people who say, well, I can't pronounce your name. I'm going to call you Sally.
Yeah. So there are two things. First of all, it is knowing that our names have power and proudly stating our name, right? So we can tell people what our name is, what it means, what our name story is, tell them what your preferred name is and how you'd like to be called, and pronounce it again if you need to correct someone. Mm-hmm. So it's okay if people make mistakes. You can pronounce it again and correct them if it is necessary, and also show them how it is pronounced phonetically. Mm-hmm. And make it easy for them. And then the other aspect is really learning how to say someone's name correctly, right? So the first thing is exactly what you so wonderfully did, which is asking the person how to say it. And most often than not, everyone will help you say their names, and they'll give you easier tips to say it correctly. And it's also important to listen, observe, and repeat after them a few times, so you know that you are pronouncing it correctly. And if you hear someone mispronouncing your friend's name, then it's really important that you speak up and you correct them politely. They may not be doing it out of purpose, but it's important that if someone forgets to say someone's name, you want to correct them and say if someone forgets to say them correctly, then somebody apologizes for getting it wrong, and then even if they don't apologize, you practice it a few times so they can remember the names and they can remember the phonetic pronunciation of the names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that idea of standing up for your friend and teaching our kids to stand up for their friend. It's such a powerful thing for a kid to do, because I think it means so much to the friend that your kid would be standing up for.
That's right. Yeah. So, I think ultimately what we're trying to do here is really empower readers with the knowledge and empathy that names have power and people have, meanings for their name that are absolutely significant. And then we help them honor it for the respect that it deserves.
Yeah. I think one of the things we talk a lot here on the podcast about what kind of conversations families can have as they're reading a book together. I'm guessing that My Name is as Long as a River would be a great jumping off point for not only learning about India and getting a glimpse into this different culture, but it would also be a great starting point for families to start talking about their family and their history and why parents chose to name their kid whatever the name they chose.
Absolutely, yes. And that is what is the ultimate goal of this book is, which is to encourage them to celebrate the differences in their classrooms and then take pride in specific aspects of their identity and also reflect on their own backgrounds and culture and overall identity so they can unpack where their names came from and ultimately articulate them, show what makes them unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many different opportunities for families with this book, reading this book. They could, we talk about some parents complain, I have to read that book again to my kids. You can read a book 500 different ways, and I think that's what we can do with My Name is as Long as a River. We can talk about the culture we're looking into, talking about our own family, talking about why we name each other whatever name it is, talking about some of our friends at school. I think what a wonderful gift for a family your book is. Just a great launching point for so many different conversations.
Thank you, Jed. Thank you for seeing that part of the book.
Yes. Tell us where we can go to find out more about you and find out more about My Name is as Long as a River.
Yeah, so My Name is Long as a River is available wherever books are sold. And more information about me is on my website, sumasubramaniam.com. And I'm also Suma Subramaniam on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and also Suma_V_S on Twitter, or X, the way it's called now.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of My Name is as Long as a River, a beautiful picture book from our guest, Suma Subramaniam. Suma, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be on your podcast.
Wouldn't it be cool if your kids can learn all about emotions simply by reading a bedtime story with you? Introducing Bella Santini in the Land of Everlasting Change, the award-winning fairy tale book that has captured the hearts of parents and children alike. It's been called a life-changing masterpiece, winner of the prestigious Golden Wizard Book Award and the Mom's Choice Awards. You are going to love it. Get your copy of Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change today and take off on a magical journey of emotional growth. Are you looking to inspire your kids to explore the STEM fields? Let me suggest that you add Astronaut Aquanaut, a space science and sea science interact to your family library. Astronaut Aquanaut was written by our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, so you know The information is going to be accurate. It is going to be written in a style that captures your kids' attention and holds it. Kids love this book. I love this book. The pictures are amazing. Get your copy today. Astronaut, Aquanaut, How Space Science and Sea Science Interact by Jennifer Swanson. A reading with your kids, certified great read. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Jacksonville in Florida. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut picture book. It's called The Adventures of Pickle Juice and Patty Cakes. Please welcome to Reading with Your Kids, Heather Marie. Heather, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm delighted. I should also ask Pickles and Patty Cakes how they're doing, but they probably don't want to tell me.
They're doing great.
Heather is holding the two inspirations for her book, two really cute, adorable, are they French bulldogs?
Yes, they're Frenchies.
That's wonderful. And now, so the folks who are listening, there's a black Frenchie and a kind of a blonde Frenchie. Who is who?
So she's a blue Frenchie, and this is Pickle Juice, and this is Patty Cake.
And how long have they been in your life?
So they are a year and a half old, both of them. They're both sisters. They're both from the same litter. And they both had a lot of complications when they were babies. So that is another reason why I started a children's book series on them, because their story has a great message for the kids as well.
So let's jump into it. What is the story that we're going to experience when we pick up book one of the series?
So my first book in this series, Pickle Juice and Patty Cakes Ice Cream Adventure, is to teach kids how to problem solve, to never give up. If something gets hard, still continue to keep going, continue to push. It may be hard, but it will happen, and to always be kind. In this world, it is getting so bad out there, and it's really important to teach kids at a very young age to start being kind to others.
You know, it really is concerning. The day that we're recording this, in the news, there's lots of, in addition to the typical problems that we see on the local TV news, we're also hearing about all sorts of protests and violence breaking out on college campuses all around the United States and in other parts of the world. And it just is concerning that we're at a point that it seems like we can't agree to disagree. It seems like, we either have to agree with everything somebody else says, or they want nothing to do with us, or they want to do us harm.
It's awful. In regards to that, I had a recent tragedy in my family. 3 weeks ago, my nephew was murdered. He was 19 years old, and it's just out of sheer hate. There's no other reason for it. He did absolutely nothing wrong. This man was harassing him since last August, him and his girlfriend, and he just came home. He was on the porch, and the man just shot him in the back several times. He didn't even know he was coming. And it's literally just people are just losing their minds. And I think it all starts with our kids and really teaching them how to act to others, how to treat others, how to respect differences in others as well.
I am incredibly sorry for your loss. I'm wondering how you're able to kind of keep it together to be able to be on the podcast right now.
So this is really the first week that I've been able to really pull myself together. The last 3 weeks have been an absolute nightmare for our family. And this really wants me to push even more to get out to more kids. My next book, actually, Pickle Juice and Patty Cake Space Adventure, the story is about diversity and accepting differences in others. And of course, while this was not planned, I am dedicating that book to him and going to try to get the message out to others, because it's just getting so bad in our world.
It really is. I'm again. I can't imagine the pain that you must still be feeling right now.
Yes, it's awful.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy that you have made the commitment to keep going and, in fact, let this tragedy inspire you to spread this message of kindness and love and acceptance to kids. It seems like you're even more determined to share this message now than before.
I really am now, 'cause it really hit home. So
I'm sure. So a little bit more about the series. Did you always aspire to be a children's author?
So I've always loved writing. I was that child in kindergarten, first grade that would staple the pages together and write my own stories and illustrate my own stories. Although my illustrations have always been terrible, which is why I hired an illustrator, because that is just not my cup of tea. But I admire everyone that does, because their work is gorgeous, and without them, I wouldn't have a book. So. But I've always loved writing. I just never knew what I wanted to write about. And my fiance actually came home with a mat that had just like a cartoon image of pickle juice and patty cakes on it. I had no idea he was getting it. And when he brought it home, I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, I can make a children's book series on the puppies. So that's what I've done.
Wow. That's so cool. A gift, a real thoughtful gesture of kindness and love inspired this book and this series of kindness and love.
Yes.
Yeah. So what kind of complications did Pickle Juice and Patty Cakes go through when they were younger?
So they both had pneumonia when they were younger. Pickle Juice had pneumonia for 2 months, and we had to bottle feed her. Well, actually, my fiance fed her every 2 hours for the first 6 to 8 weeks for a couple reasons. Their mom wasn't producing enough milk, and then she also, every time that she would be fed, it would come back out through her nose. So it was really complicated for her. She was on medications. She was very, very skinny. We were really worried about her. We didn't think she was going to make it, but she pulled through. And then Patty Cakes, she had pneumonia as well, but one night, it was probably like 2 or 3 in the morning, she turned blue. She turned completely blue. I didn't think she was going to make it. I was freaking out. My fiance, Jet, was calm. He's like, just be calm. There's nothing we can do. And I'm like, no, let's go. Let's go to the vet now. We got in the car. We went. We prayed the entire way there. We got into the parking lot. We didn't even make it inside. We got into the parking lot. He had her in a portable incubator. He opened it up, and she was fine. She was completely fine. There was nothing wrong with her. We didn't even have to go into the vet. And she's literally a miracle. Like, there's no other explanation, because when we saw her, she was literally blue and laying there lifeless.
Wow. Wow. What a story.
So that is where I got my inspiration to really focus on spreading kindness and love and never giving up.
Yeah.
And again with at a young age.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not very familiar with French bulldogs. They're awfully cute. Tell us a little bit about the breed and some of their traits.
So they're amazing. They're hilarious. They all have great personalities. They like to do zoomies around the house, outside. They're very loving. That's probably their best trait, honestly, is they're so loving. They love cuddles. They love walks. One thing about them, though, is their breathing is not very good. So, like, they can't be outside for very long, especially her, Patty Cakes. Her breathing was so bad. and you can hear her. Like, some people think that she's snarling at them, but she's actually like, she will lick you to death, and that's about it.
Now, is the breeding difficult because they've been bred to have such short snouts?
So when they were born, they were 5 ounces.
Wow.
So they're out very, very tiny. And these particular girls, they're considered micros. So they're full grown. They won't get any bigger. As you can see, she's pretty tiny.
Yeah. What is the story in Ice Cream Adventures that we're going to experience?
So the puppies go on an ice cream adventure to find ice cream. And along the way, they encounter many obstacles, muddy puddles, even cat. Patty Cakes actually falls in a hole, and Pickle Juice helps her out. And when they get to the ice cream shop, they realize that they forgot their money at home. So they had no way to pay for the ice cream. And the ice cream shop owner was kind enough to still allow them to have the ice cream for free. So that is where the kindness aspect comes in. Even though they forgot the money, the shopkeeper still welcomed them in and still gave them the ice cream.
Well, I love that, and it seems like it's a great opportunity. Reading in this book with our kids is a great opportunity to talk to them about developing grit and resiliency and never giving up.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Heather, where can we go to find out more about you and find out more about the adventures of Pickle Juice and Patty Cakes?
So on my website, www.heathermariebooks.com. And I have my books on there, and I also have a bunch of different sensory options as well, like a smash mat option, sensory bin kit. I really started focusing on that aspect because my stepdaughter is on the spectrum. So she learns differently, and we've really found ways that excite her about learning and about reading. And one of the things she loves is the smash mat activity that I do have available on my website as well.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Adventures of Adventures of Pickle Juice and Patty Cake. Our guest has been Heather Marie, and we were also joined by Pickle Juice and Patty Cake. Heather, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Until then, please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Chris, want to start by thanking our guests, José Pablo Iriarte, Suma Subramaniam, and Heather Marie. Want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Judy Hu. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of her support, but most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.